Budapest, 1976. In a small apartment in the heart of the city, a bold experiment was about to begin. On July 23rd of that year, Judit Polgar was born into a Jewish-Hungarian family, the youngest of 3 daughters. Her father, Laszlo Polgar, was not an ordinary parent. He believed that geniuses are made, not born, and he was determined to prove it. Together with his wife Clara, he set out to test this idea through a radical educational experiment. The plan: to raise their 3 daughters, Susan, Sophia, and Judit, to become exceptional thinkers by training them in a single, specialized field from a very early age. That field would be chess. The girls were homeschooled, another unconventional choice in socialist Hungary, where such private education was discouraged. Authorities resisted the idea, seeing it as unsocialist, while critics in the West claimed that the Polgar parents were depriving their daughters of a normal childhood. But inside the Polgar home, the atmosphere was anything but ordinary. It was a place of curiosity, focus, and ambition. Alongside chess, Laszlo also taught his daughters Esperanto, the international language, as part of his dream of raising global citizens. Outside their home, the world of chess was still very much a man's domain. Women were often seen as weaker players, a belief so entrenched that entire female-only tournaments were created to maintain the divide. But Laszlo refused to accept that idea. Women are able to achieve results similar in fields of intellectual activities to that of men, he wrote. Chess is a form of intellectual activity, so this applies to chess. Accordingly, we reject any kind of discrimination in this respect. This philosophy put the family in conflict with the Hungarian Chess Federation, whose policy insisted that women compete only in women's events. Yet, the Polgars stood their ground. They weren't raising female chess players. They were raising chess players, period. And from this bold experiment, the youngest of the 3, Judit, would grow to become one of the greatest chess minds the world has ever seen. From the moment she first touched the chessboard, it was clear that Judit Polgar was no ordinary child. Trained by her older sister Susan, she showed signs of brilliance from a remarkably young age. At just 5 years old, she stunned a family friend by defeating him without even looking at the board. When he jokingly told her, "You're good at chess, but I'm a good cook," Judit shot back with a mischievous smile. "Do you cook without looking at the stove?" Even so, Susan would later admit that Judit wasn't the most naturally gifted of the sisters. Judit was a slow starter, she said, but very hard-working. And that hard work became her defining trait. Judit herself described those early years with a single word: obsessive. By age 10, she had already defeated an international master, Dolphy Dreimer. A year later, she toppled her first Grandmaster, Lev Gutman. Her rise was astonishingly fast, but it wasn't luck. It was hours of relentless study and an unshakable focus few children could match. She began playing in tournaments at 6. By the time she was 9, her rating with the Hungarian Chess Federation had already reached 2,080. In 1984, something extraordinary happened. At ages 9 and 7, Sophia and Judit played 2 games of blindfold chess against masters in Budapest and won both. At one point, the girls even complained that their opponents were playing too slowly and suggested using a clock. 2 years later, in April 1986, 9-year-old Judit crossed the Atlantic to compete in her first-rated tournament, the New York Open. It was her first time in the United States, and she dominated the unrated section, finishing first and taking home $1,000 in prize money. Her sisters Susan, then 16, and Sophia, 11, also competed. But it was Judit who captured everyone's attention. Grandmasters would gather around her board, watching this serious, quiet child as she calmly demolished one opponent after another. She won her first 7 games before drawing the last. Her 6th-round opponent, a strong Yugoslav player, later admitted, "I took some chances because I couldn't believe she was going to attack so well." Judit didn't speak English yet, so her mother acted as interpreter when a reporter asked her about her future. Would she one day be world champion? "I will try," she replied. Later that same year, in Adelaide, Australia, Grandmaster Edmar Mednis, who faced her there, confessed afterward, "I was careful in that game. Grandmasters don't like to lose to 10-year-old girls, because then we make the front page of all the papers." By April 1988, Judit was already making history. At 12, she achieved her first international master norm at the New York Open, then won the under-12 boys section at the World Youth Chess and Peace Festival in Timișoara, Romania. A few months later, she took first place in a London tournament ahead of Israeli Grandmaster Yair Kreidman. Those 3 results together earned her the title of International Master.
By far the biggest crowd gathers around Judith, one of the very few chess prodigies in history. In November, 12-year-old Judith became the youngest ever international master, beating out chess greats like Bobby Fischer and Garry Kasparov, who made it at the age of 14. This year, she should make Grandmaster, again the youngest ever.
Former world champion Mikhail Tal was so impressed that he said the young Hungarian had the potential to win the world championship. When asked why she played against boys instead of in girls' tournaments, Judith's answer was characteristically direct. "These other girls are not serious about chess. I practice 5 or 6 hours a day, but they get distracted by cooking and work around the house." In November 1988, Judith, her sisters, and Ildikó Madl represented Hungary at the Women's Chess Olympiad in Thessaloniki. The International Chess Federation wouldn't allow the Pulgar sisters to compete against men in team events, but they made history anyway. Before the event, Soviet coach Eduard Gufeld dismissed them, saying, "We'll see if the Hungarian sisters are geniuses or just women." The Polgars answered on the board. Hungary won the championship, the first time in history the Soviet Union had been defeated. Playing on board, two 12-year-old Judiths scored an incredible 12.5 out of 13 points, taking the individual gold medal and the tournament's brilliancy prize for her victory over Pavlina Angelova. By January 1989, the world could no longer ignore her. Judith's ELO rating had climbed to 2,555, ranked 55th in the world and number 1 among all women. She stood 35 points above the reigning women's world champion, Maja Cibernidze, and even 45 points ahead of her sister Susan. In just 6 months, she had gained 190 rating points. The British chess magazine declared, "Judit Polgar's recent results make the performances of Fischer and Kasparov at a similar age pale by comparison. Despite her quiet demeanor at the board, Judith's play was ferocious." British Grandmaster David Norwood described her as this cute little auburn-haired monster who crushed you. Journalist Dominic Lawson recalled her killer eyes, gray and piercing, set against her long red hair, giving her an aura of intensity few could forget. By 1990, even established players were taking notice. Nigel Short called her one of the 3 or 4 greatest chess prodigies in history. Garry Kasparov, however, was skeptical.
Might Kasparov one day defend his title against a woman?
I don't think so. It's too difficult for women to play the real professional chess.
In 1989, Judith tied with Boris Gelfand for 3rd place at the OHRA Open in Amsterdam, earning her first Grandmaster norm. By this point, the Polgar sisters had become international celebrities. Books and documentaries chronicled their story, and in 1989, they even met U.S. President George H.W. Bush and First Lady Barbara Bush during their visit to Hungary. A year later, Judith appeared in the filming of Chess Kids, a documentary about young players, though her father declined interviews that weren't compensated. That same year, she won the Under-14 Boys section of the World Youth Chess Festival in Wisconsin.
Judith becomes the 1990 Boys Under 14 World Champion.
And again helped Hungary claim gold in the Women's Olympiad, the last women-only event she would ever play. The experiment her father began in a small Budapest apartment was no longer a theory. It was becoming a revolution. In December 1991, at just 15 years and 4 months old, Judit Polgar achieved what no woman and no one her age had ever done before. By winning the Hungarian National Championship, she earned the title of Grandmaster, becoming the youngest ever to hold it at the time, breaking Bobby Fischer's record by a full month. She wasn't just the youngest Grandmaster in history, she was also the first woman ever to hold that distinction, and only the 4th woman in history to achieve the Grandmaster title following Nona Gaprindashvili, Maja Cibernidze, and her own sister, Susan Pulgar. In doing so, Judith shattered another record. Susan had previously been the youngest female Grandmaster in history, a title Judith now claimed by more than 7 years. That year's Hungarian championship had been fiercely contested. Nearly every one of Hungary's top players competed. Going into the final round, Judith needed only a draw to secure her title. But true to her nature, she refused to settle. Facing Grandmaster Tibor Tolnai, she played for the win, and got it, finishing first with 6 points out of 9. The following year, Judith continued her relentless climb. In 1992, she tied for 2nd place behind Anatoly Karpov at the Madrid International in Linares, finishing with 5.5 out of 9 alongside Russian Grandmaster Vladimir Epeshin. By the start of 1993, the young Hungarian prodigy was no longer just a rising star. She was a full-fledged threat to the world's best. Over New Year's, she tied for first place at the prestigious Hastings tournament. Russian Grandmaster Evgeny Barev, ranked 8th in the world at the time, led going into the final round, until Judit defeated him head-to-head in their second encounter, snatching a share of the title. Soon after, in February 1993, she played a 10-game exhibition match against former world champion Boris Spassky and won. The final score, 5.5 to 4.5, along with a career record prize of $110,000. That same year, she took part in the Melody Amber tournament in Monaco, an elite event featuring 12 grandmasters competing in blindfold and rapid chess. While Anand and Karpov claimed the top spots and Lubojevich finished third, Judit secured a remarkable 4th place with 6.5 points from 11 rounds, finishing ahead of players like Ivanchuk, Short, Korchnoi, and even her sister Susan. In 1993, Judit made history once again, becoming the first woman ever to qualify for an interzonal tournament. That March, she tied for second in the Budapest zonal and went on to win the tiebreak event, securing her place among the world's elite. She narrowly missed qualification for both the FIDE and PCA candidates tournaments, but her performance confirmed what many already knew. She wasn't just the strongest woman in chess, she was one of the strongest players in the world, period. That same summer brought an unexpected guest to the Pulgar household, Bobby Fischer himself. Living in seclusion in Yugoslavia following a U.S. arrest warrant for violating sanctions during his 1992 rematch with Spassky, Fischer was persuaded by Susan Polgar and her family to visit them in Budapest. During his stay, he spent hours playing Fischer random chess with the sisters and analyzing their games. Though Fischer could be warm in person, tensions arose, particularly over his political and anti-Semitic remarks. When a blitz match between Fischer and Judit was proposed, disagreements followed, and the match was cancelled. Fischer reportedly told a friend who asked whether it would still happen, "No, they're Jewish."
United States, the Jews. The Jews are a criminal people. They mutilate their children. They're murderous, criminal, thieving, lying bastards. They made up the Holocaust. There's not a word of truth to it.
In the summer of 1994, Judit achieved the greatest triumph of her career to that point, victory at the Madrid International in Spain. She dominated the event with a score of 7 out of 9, finishing a commanding 1.5 points ahead of her nearest rival. Her performance rating, an extraordinary 2,778. Later that year, in October 1994, she traveled to Buenos Aires for a tribute tournament honoring the ailing Lev Polugayevsky. 8 of the world's best, Karpov, Anand, Salav, Ivanchuk, Kamsky, Shirov, Lubojevich, and Pulgar faced off under one special rule. Every game, as black, had to begin with the Sicilian defense, Polugayevsky's lifetime specialty. It was a rule that played directly into Judit's hands. The Sicilian was her favorite opening. Against this elite lineup, she finished tied for third with Ivanchuk, trailing only Karpov and Anand. In 1994, at the prestigious Linares tournament, Judit Polgar faced one of the greatest and most intimidating figures in chess history, world champion Garry Kasparov. For the 17-year-old Hungarian prodigy, it was her first invitation to compete among the world's very best. After 4 rounds, she had held her own 2 points from 4 games when she was paired with the reigning champion in round 5. From the very start, the game was tense. Move by move, Kasparov applied pressure, gradually outplaying her until he held a clear advantage after 35 moves. Then, something extraordinary and controversial happened.
1 de marzo, quinta jornada del torneo. Kasparov juega con negras. Tiene que realizar su jugada 36 y no dispone de mucho tiempo, porque le faltan 5 jugadas antes del primer control. Excederse del tiempo supondría una derrota. Las imágenes ralentizadas muestran cómo Kasparov desplaza su caballo y llega a soltarlo. Después rectifica y hace otro movimiento con esa misma pieza. Eso sería legal, solo en el caso de que la pieza tocada no hubiera sido soltada, pero la mano abierta de Kasparov delata lo contrario. Judit Polgar parece mirar extrañada al comprobar la maniobra de su contrincante, pero no hace nada y al filmar su conformidad al final de la partida, anula cualquier posibilidad de reclamación.
According to the laws of chess, once a player releases a piece, the move must stand. If Kasparov's fingers had indeed left the knight, he should have been required to play his original move. But Polgar, facing the most powerful player in the world and playing in her first super tournament, did not object. As she later explained, "I was playing the world champion and didn't want to cause unpleasantness during my first invitation to such an important event. I was also afraid that if my complaint was overruled, I would be penalized on the clock when we were in time pressure." Still, she couldn't hide her unease. She looked toward the arbiter, Carlos Falcon, who had witnessed the incident, yet he took no action. According to reports, Judit later confronted Kasparov in the hotel bar, asking him directly, "How could you do this to me?" Kasparov's response was sharp. In an interview soon after, he remarked, "She just publicly said I was cheating. I think a girl of her age should be taught some good manners before making such statements." When asked later, Kasparov insisted his conscience was clear, claiming he hadn't realized his hand had left the piece. Though Pulgar finished the tournament respectably, the experience clearly shook her. In the 6 rounds that followed, she went into a slump, scoring only half a point. She ended the tournament second to last. By 1995, Judit was a permanent presence among the world's top players. That September, she finished third at the Donner Memorial in Amsterdam, scoring 7 out of 11. That same year, the chess world tried to stage a match like no other. The Isle of Lewis Chess Club in Scotland proposed that Judit face Nigel Short using the legendary Lewis chessmen, the 12th century ivory figures discovered on the island. The British Museum, however, refused to release the ancient pieces even after assurances that the players would wear gloves. Scottish MP Callum MacDonald argued that the set would be safe, especially as chess is not a contact sport. In the end, the museum allowed the Lewis pieces to be displayed at the Isle of Lewis Festival tournament, but not used. Judit played the event anyway, a double round-robin among 4 grandmasters, and won decisively, scoring 5 out of 6, including 2 victories over Nigel Short. While the world watched Judit Polgar rack up victories and shatter records, there was another story unfolding on the board, the story of how she played. Unlike many of her contemporaries, Pulgar combined a strong understanding of positional play with an unparalleled talent for tactics. She thrived on complexity, seeking out complications and pursuing initiative with relentless intensity. As Garry Kasparov once observed, if to play like a girl meant anything in chess, it would mean relentless aggression. From her earliest tournaments, fans were captivated by her daring. Wild gambits, audacious attacks, and unexpected sacrifices became her signature. Even as a teenager, she influenced the popularity of the King's Bishop's Gambit, bringing a bold, aggressive flair to a generation of chess enthusiasts. Her choices at the board reflected not only her skill but her philosophy. Maximize opportunity, take the initiative, and pressure the opponent into mistakes. She preferred openings that promised dynamic play. E4 as white, the Sicilian or King's Indian defense with black, but she adapted depending on the advice of her coaches. Pulgar's influence extended far beyond her personal victories. Jennifer Shahade, herself a 2-time U.S. women's champion, noted that Pulgar's style may have inspired a new wave of aggressive play among women, encouraging them to take risks and seize the board with confidence. Former U.S. champion Joel Benjamin, reflecting on a game against her, described the experience vividly. "It was all out war for 5 hours. I was totally exhausted. She is a tiger at the chessboard. She absolutely has a killer instinct. You make one mistake, and she goes right for the throat." Her skill was not confined to long classical games. Blitz and rapid chess revealed her tactical brilliance in condensed form. But Pulgar's genius extended beyond calculation and aggression. She understood the psychology of the game. She studied her opponents, exploiting their tendencies and forcing them to play against themselves. In her celebrated 2002 victory over Kasparov at a 25-minute time control, she deliberately chose a line he had once used against Vladimir Kramnik, creating a situation where the world champion faltered under his own familiar strategies. Reflecting on the difference between humans and machines, she once remarked, "Chess is 30 to 40% psychology. You don't have this when you play a computer. I can't confuse it." Through it all, Pulgar's style became her signature, a blend of aggression, creativity, and cunning that left an indelible mark on the chess world. Her games were not just contests of calculation, but lessons in courage, strategy, and the art of daring. By the mid-1990s, Judit Polgar had already proven herself more than a prodigy. She was a phenomenon. By January 1996, she achieved what no other woman in history ever had. She entered the top 10 players in the world. It was an accomplishment that redefined what women could achieve in chess, a statement against centuries of assumption. The same year, in São Paulo, she faced Brazil's champion Gilbert Milos in a 4-game match, a contest of precision and nerve. Pulgar triumphed, winning 2 games, drawing 1 and losing 1, taking home $12,000 in prize money. The following year, February 1997, brought her back to Linares, the Wimbledon of chess. Against a field including Kasparov, Kramnik, Anand, and Ivanchuk, she finished a remarkable 5th, ahead of many of those same legends. Commentators praised her bold tactics, especially in her thrilling win against Ivanchuk, which was cited as a masterpiece of attacking chess. Her tour continued across Europe, Dos Hermanas, Madrid, Dortmund, and Hugeveen, where she consistently finished in the upper half of the table, often against the world's best. Even the New York Times took notice. Grandmaster Robert Byrne wrote in August 1997, "There has long been a lively debate about who is the strongest player of all, Fischer, Kasparov, Capablanca, Alekhine, or Lasker. But there is no argument about the greatest female player. She is 2 one-year-old Judit Polgar." In 1998, Polgar added another astonishing achievement to her growing legacy. In Budapest, she faced Anatoly Karpov, then FIDE world champion, in a rapid action chess match, and she won 5-3. That same year, she became the first woman ever to win the U.S. Open, held in Hawaii, sharing the title with Boris Golko after a dazzling queen sacrifice against Georgi Kasheshvili. Yet, despite her brilliance, her rating slipped slightly from her peak. Though still ranked among the top 20, invitations to the elite events became rarer. In October 1999, Pulgar fought back. At the VAM chess tournament in the Netherlands, she made a dramatic comeback, scoring 3 points in her final 4 games to share first place once again, finishing ahead of Karpov. Early 2000s brought setbacks, middling results in Pamplona and Wijk aan Zee, where Kasparov triumphed while Pulgar finished with 5 points in 13 games. But she rebounded brilliantly at the European Teams Championship in Batumi, taking the gold medal on board too, with a score of 6.5 out of 9. Her greatest success that year came in Asia. At the Japfa Classic in Bali, Indonesia, one of the strongest tournaments ever held on the continent, she outplayed a field including Karpov, Khalifman, and Milos. She finished clear first, 1.5 points ahead, earning $20,000 in prize money and a performance rating of 2,778. Victories followed in Sweden's Sigeman & Co. tournament and the Najdorf Chess Festival, where she tied for first ahead of Karpov and Short. At the 2000 Olympiad, she delivered one of her strongest performances ever, 10 out of 13, the second highest individual score of any player in the event. In 2001, Polgar returned to Linares once more, facing Kasparov, Karpov, Leko, Grishuk, and Shirov, 6 of the world's most elite players. Though Kasparov won the tournament, Judit's quiet triumph came in her 2 draws against him, the first time in her career she had ever held the world champion under classical time controls. Then came September 2002, a date that would enter chess history. In the Russia versus the rest of the world match, playing under rapid time controls, Judit Polgar defeated Garry Kasparov. The victory helped the world team clinch the match, 52-48. Kasparov, known for his fiery temperament, left immediately through a restricted passage, avoiding journalists and photographers. He had once dismissed Pulgar as a circus puppet, insisting women should stick to having children. Now, she had beaten him at his own game. Pulgar called it one of the most remarkable moments of my career. It was the first time in chess history that a woman had defeated the world's #1 player in competitive play. Her success continued at the 35th Chess Olympiad, where she played second board for Hungary, helping the team win silver behind Russia. By early 2003, she had climbed back into the top 10, regaining her place among the chess elite. That same year, she achieved one of her career's finest results, a clear second place at the chorus tournament in Wijk aan Zee, just half a point behind Anand and ahead of Kramnik. Her victory over Karpov there was a masterpiece, a 33-move attacking gem featuring an over-the-board novelty that left the former world champion helpless. In the months that followed, she placed second in Budapest, third in France, and won the Ascent tournament in Hugeveen after unleashing a classic double bishop sacrifice, a maneuver first played by Emanuel Lasker in 1889. By 2004, after years of unrelenting competition, Judit Polgar stepped away from the chessboard for one of life's greatest milestones, the birth of her son Oliver. It was a rare pause in a career defined by intensity and focus. For the first time in decades, her name disappeared from the official FIDE rating list. She was considered inactive. During this time, her sister Susan Polgar briefly reclaimed the title of world's #1 female player, a symbolic moment showing how the Polgar legacy continued to shape women's chess even in Judith's absence. But Judith's hiatus would not last long. On January 15, 2005, she returned to the grand stage at the prestigious Chorus tournament in Wyk aan Zee, often regarded as Europe's most important chess event. The comeback was strong. She finished with 7 out of 13 points, tying for 4th place alongside elite players such as Alexander Grishuk, Michael Adams, and Vladimir Kramnik. Fellow Hungarian Peter Leko ultimately won the tournament. Her return performance lifted her rating slightly, and by April, she was back on the FIDE list. Then came another successful run, a 3rd-place finish at a strong tournament in Sofia, Bulgaria in May, earning her a career-high rating of 2,735 in July of 2005. At that moment, she stood 8th in the world, still the only woman in chess history to reach such heights. Later that year, in September 2005, Judith made history once again. She became the first woman ever to compete in the final stages of a World Chess Championship, the FIDE World Chess Championship 2005. Unlike the massive knockout events of earlier years, this was an intimate, high-stakes 8-player round robin. Judith qualified purely by rating, but against the world's very best, she struggled to find her rhythm and finished last. A year later, Judith paused once more, this time for the birth of her daughter Hannah on July 6, 2006. Chess took a backseat again, but not for long. Just months after giving birth, she re-emerged on the Blitz circuit, competing in the 2006 FIDE World Blitz Championship in Rishon LeZion, Israel. Against some of the world's sharpest tactical minds, Judith tied for 5th place and defeated world #2 Viswanathan Anand in their head-to-head game. Her resurgence continued that October when she tied for 1st place at the Ascent Chess Tournament in Hoogeveen, Netherlands, with a powerful 4.5 out of 6 score, including 2 victories over the world's top-rated player, Veselin Topalov. In 2007, she returned to elite classical competition at the Candidates Tournament for the FIDE World Chess Championship. She was eliminated in the first round by Evgeny Barev, but her 5th game, a fierce attacking victory, was hailed by commentators as the most beautiful attack of the tournament. Her form remained steady. In October 2007, she competed at the Blindfold World Cup in Bilbao, Spain, finishing 4th out of 6 players and handing the eventual champion, Bu Xiangji, his only loss of the event. Her momentum continued into 2008 when she competed once more at Chorus Wyk aan Zee, scoring 6 out of 13 against the world's best and tying for 9th place. Later that year, however, she endured one of her toughest events, finishing last in the World Blitz Championship in Almaty, Kazakhstan, with just 2.5 points from 16 games. That November, she also represented Hungary on board 2 at the 38th Chess Olympiad in Dresden, scoring 3.5 out of 8. 2 years later, in November 2009, she entered the FIDE World Cup in Khanty-Mansiysk, Siberia, advancing to the 3rd round before being eliminated by Boris Gelfand, who would go on to win the tournament. Even in defeat, Judith made her mark, handing Gelfand his only loss of the event. Through triumphs and challenges, motherhood and world championships, Judit Polgar proved that the balance between chess and family was not a trade-off. It was a new kind of victory. She didn't stop there. In November 2010, Judith claimed victory in a rapid tournament held in honor of the National University of Mexico's 100th anniversary. She narrowly defeated Vasily Ivanchuk in her opening match, then dominated Veselin Topalov, a former world champion, and once ranked world #1 with a stunning 3 wins and 1 draw to win the event. In 2011, Polgar's creativity and tactical sharpness were once again on full display. At the European Individual Chess Championship in Aix-les-Bains, France, she tied for 1st place in a massive field of 393 players, 167 of them Grandmasters, ultimately finishing 3rd on tiebreaks behind Vladimir Patkin and Radosław Wojtaszek. She was praised for her inventive attacks and precise endgame technique, and with her performance, she became the first woman ever to place in the top 3 of the Men's European Championship. That September, she competed in the Chess World Cup, a grueling 128-player knockout event offering qualification to the World Championship cycle. Judit reached the quarterfinals, eliminating the tournament's top seed, Sergei Karjakin, the world's 5th highest-rated player at the time. Her run ended against Peter Svidler, but the result was a major statement. The following month, she joined the elite 4-player Unive Crown Group in Hugaveen, where she faced off against Vladimir Kramnik and Anish Giri. By October, Judit had officially returned to Super Grandmaster status, breaking the 2,700 rating barrier once again with 2,701, and by November, she had climbed to 2,710, ranking 35th in the world. The following year began with her participation in the TradeWise Gibraltar tournament in January 2012, where she scored 7 out of 10. For the first time in 22 years, since her loss to Nona Gaprindashvili in 1990, Judit lost a classical game to another female player, falling to women's world champion Hu Yifan, who went on to tie for first before losing a playoff to Nigel Short. In 2014, she took part in the World Rapid and Blitz Championships, finishing 26th in Blitz and 56th in Rapid. Then, on August 13, 2014, Judit Polgar announced that she was retiring from chess at the highest competitive level. In a world where the chessboard was long considered a man's domain, one woman redrew the boundaries, not with declarations, but with moves. Judit was never content to be the best woman in chess. She aimed to be one of the best, period. From a Budapest living room filled with chessboards and textbooks, a father's belief in nurture over nature gave rise to a phenomenon. Trained not for comfort, but for greatness. Judit and her sisters grew up proving a thesis that genius can be taught, that brilliance can be built. And in doing so, she shattered every stereotype the game had known. At just 15, she became a Grandmaster, younger than Bobby Fischer. She stood toe-to-toe with Kasparov, Karpov, Anand, and countless others, not as a token, but as a rival. Her victories were not symbolic. They were strategic, calculated, earned over hours of quiet concentration and years of relentless discipline. Judit didn't change chess by rewriting its rules. She changed it by playing within them better than anyone expected she could. Even in her most difficult moments, under controversy, criticism, and the shadow of giants, she held herself with a rare mixture of grace and defiance. Her story was not only about moves on a board, but about moving the boundaries of belief itself. When she finally laid down her pieces in 2014, it wasn't defeat. It was completion. The end of a match that had already changed the game forever. Today, her legacy lives on, not only in the record books, but in every girl and every player who dares to see the board without limits. Judit didn't just play chess, she played history, one brilliant move at a time. Putting together a documentary like this takes a lot of time and research, so if you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing. It really helps me keep making more. And let me know in the comments what story or player you'd like to see covered next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.